Thank you so much. So in April, we started talking about if there were future updates to the tools, what would the community like to see, what would be most helpful. And something that came out of that is a thread on Zulip, and I'm going to drop it in the chat now, which is a place for ongoing discussion on tooling updates that would be helpful, that help prioritize that future roadmap. I'll just, since we just talked about kind of a troubleshooting issue with the site being down, I'll just quickly differentiate that the usual method for questions about an error or the existing tool being down should still be reported in the way that you are instructed to on the site, and that the Zulip is really for community discussion about future updates to tooling. So now I'll kind of open the floor. We didn't have any additions to that Zulip chat, so I'll just kind of open the floor to community members who want to talk about tooling updates.
Is there like suggestions for ideas?
Yes.
Okay, so I see they have one bullet point on your Zulip. You're right, there's no one here. Maybe we just didn't realize after the IAT to come back to it, but I did click your link in chat. And one of the things mentioned, can the validation tools be more modular to validate a single section rather than the whole document? I think that's a cool idea. And then the idea of line numbers, I think is something from the UI itself. When there's an error that happens, if a line number or some other kind of hint can be provided, usually the workflow is if you get an error that has no line number, you go to the Lantana testing tool, and their tool has the line number for you to look at. Maybe it's a comma, maybe it's an extra character, whatever have you, but that line number gets you that much closer to the solution.
So it's really helpful how you connected like the change to what how it would be helpful. Some of the bullets in the Zulip chat are we're looking for exactly that type of information, which is, you know, if you're making this suggestion, it would be helpful. Tell us how it's helpful. Give us that extra information so that we can we don't have to mind read and or
Exactly.
predict how it would be helpful for the community, because that way we can be most responsive.
I got you covered. I can add that to that Zulip and add some screenshots and then go from there.
Thank you so much. Oh, screenshots are wonderful.
No problem.
Okay, that Zulip chat is out there. If you don't have any thoughts to share right now, but want to in the future, we're taking a look at that. And so is this CDA management group. So it's oops, sorry, I'm just scrolling too much. Okay, it's available. And so now we can just open the floor to general questions, anything that we talked about today or other questions that you have for ONC. Lisa, is your hand up?
Yes, it is.
Excellent.
Super. I wanted to ask the question about the future, and I don't know how to ask it in the most productive way, but I'm interested to know if ONC is thinking about FHIR documents or thinking about how they could begin to position the industry to move toward being able to support both CDA and FHIR documents. whether it's opening possibilities in the SVAP or beginning to, have some sort of angle on that to get in sync with implementers and to nudge implementers as the standards become ready and the testing and early prototyping is coming along nicely. Do you guys think about when is the right time to start pushing us across the starting line to use FHIR structured documents?
Think that my colleagues can address that, but before they do, I might just reflect that back to both Lisa and everyone on the call, which is what would be useful, what would be helpful, what timing from the diverse perspectives that are on the phone makes sense to you. What are your thoughts and suggestions on it?
Well, we had a slide. I don't know if you were here for the roadmap discussion, but the CDA management group has a straw man that we're just throwing out there to have people start bumping up against it, to say, what if we spend the next 3 years really equipping our community to work with the new artifacts that are available, the FHIR profiles on composition, the new tooling that's available for making IGs, both to express FHIR document profiles and CDA document templates, like everything from one tool to do this work in a hybrid kind of way, develop our capabilities to be, I call it bilingual. Dee Dee Davis calls it ready to live in a hybrid world. And if we were doing that for the next 3.5 years, with the idea or the goal, the aim to have early adopters, the ones that are at the cutting edge, be like, yeah, we're ready to start exchanging FHIR documents by 2028. Production ready, maybe we start with IPS, maybe we have a couple of select document types for specific use cases that have been, kind of new in the last, things that will be being born in the next couple of years, that kind of work, new work. If we were seeing a world like that from what we can push from the standard side, and ONC is aware of that aim, would you guys take that into consideration and be thinking, I see the industry says it's going to start getting ready at this pace, and keep an eye on us, and if we're starting to go and it's starting to happen, maybe do something to sync up to start to say, well, 2028 you've got SVAP options, 2029, maybe some of these early things you start to mention it to get people moving.
Thanks so much for that additional information, Lisa. That's really helpful. And agree, I think sharing that roadmap once it's ready would be hugely helpful. And we really do our best to, granted with the resources that we have, to stay as plugged into the work happening in HL7 and especially in the different accelerators, understanding what's being piloted and broadly implemented. So absolutely, that is a topic we can stay plugged into. IPS is a really great example.
So it's not off your radar. You would agree that you will eventually say something about FHIR documents, and really the question is just sort of like, when is the right time?
We've certainly been part of the IPS conversations. I know that's come up in quite a few places recently. Just had a presentation on some of our public health accelerator work, as well as another potential use case for that. So it's certainly on our radar. Like Jeff mentioned, our regulatory cycles are certainly out of our control, but understanding the industry adoption and use and how ONC might be able to play a role, this one is certainly on our radar, and we'll make sure to keep it on there.
Mm-hmm. Is there a reason why structured documents have been kept off the radar for US CDI up until now?
Take a quick touch base on the
Sorry, I was getting some background noise there. Is Al, are you still on the line?
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome. To maybe be able to give a little bit of additional USCDI context on kind of what we're looking for in terms of the different leveling and getting those data elements into USCDI final versions.
The question, so I missed, I only heard the second half.
I'll ask
Thank
it
you.
again, Al. Thank you very much. So we were just talking about the possibilities of ONC, including in their vision and you know the work that you do to accelerate or encourage adoption of standards, potentially being able to encourage the use of FHIR documents. And we just talked about, you know, that it might be possible and that our roadmap to doing it would be informative, et cetera. And so I asked the question, you know, kind of going backwards, if ONC has interest in seeing the industry use FHIR documents, what is the reluctance from ONC saying anything today about use of structured CDA documents?
Well, I mean, ONC already does say quite a bit about structured docs with the C-CDA structured docs. Many of the exchange criteria, certification criteria are based on C-CDA. So we already require quite a bit of structured documents through our certification programs. The USCDI is different. It's not document level content. It's granular,
Entry level
kind
content.
of more entry level,
That's the
if you will,
distinction.
entry
Okay.
level, the data element level. And so, with respect to USCDI, I can't predict the future, but it's gonna for the foreseeable future, it's gonna continue to be a data set,
Yeah.
not a
Document.
some kind of a format. It's not kind of structured format. So what ONC, I can't also predict what ONC might say about transitioning from C-CDA based documents to FHIR documents, or new criteria that require FHIR documents instead of, or in addition to C-CDA documents. Those are, I think anything's possible. I don't know that. I have not been part of a discussion where where we've talked about those latter ideas, like new criteria that transition from C-CDA to FHIR docs, or anything like that. I mean, but that could be something that we could say, just like we could make changes to any other certification criteria to achieve some new goals.
The push might come better through specific use cases, like let's say the CDC or somebody who, public health, who's interested in a case reports or specific document types that are desired by payers. It might make more sense to aim for the starting line to be materialized by specific stakeholders with particular use cases that say, this new thing we want to invest in. We don't want to start with CDA documents. You can even start with FHIR XML if you don't have people that can read JSON, but it's going to be FHIR as the schema instead of CDA. And maybe the place to light this thing on fire, no bad pun, but light it on fire, spark it up, is through specific use cases where it makes sense to just say, let's put our first foot forward straight away on a structured document where we use FHIR.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there could be a source that somebody stating, new, government initiative, stating the need for something new, could be the impetus. Somebody saying like, this is a really important, newly required use case that would benefit from, a different approach than C-CDA. I mean, all of those things could lead to either a change in existing, certification requirements, or other reporting requirements, like say a CMS reporting requirement that changes from C-CDA based, QRDA based documents to something else like a FHIR document. All of those are possibilities.
Yeah. All right. Thanks. These are good ideas. I think, one of the things that you guys could do also is like your LEAP grant efforts. When you give out money to fuel innovation to happen, that's another place where you could tip the industry toward the future by saying, you know, the dollars will be granted based on the idea that the documents that you're going to be producing will be fire documents rather than some other kind of document.
Lisa. Oh,
I
sorry.
just
That makes
I just
sense.
wanted to make like this idea may come across as being a little out there, but you know, we have an idea to change something from something old to something new. That if you see an opportunity to make a recommendation for something that's proposed in HTI2, there's an opportunity to get that idea on the record by making a comment that say, instead of requiring this, you should require that. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but that's another place to sort of get your foot in the door, if you will.
Great suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Alex. I'll add a little bit more color because I'm thinking about sort of the evolution of fire with respect to ONC's policies and programs as maybe a good example of how this might work. You know, if you think back to sort of when fire was initially in development, you know, ONC wasn't super involved in that process, and we didn't necessarily have like a long-term roadmap that said by, you know, 2020 or whatever date it, you know, ended up being, that we wanted, you know, fire as part of the certification program. I mean, some people might have been thinking that, but it certainly wasn't like, I think, a broad organizational goal at the time. You know, we were thinking about some of the sort of capabilities that fire provides, right? Things like API exchange. You know, you can go all the way back to the JSON task force, which, you know, talked about sort of metadata models and APIs in healthcare and things like that. And, you know, we were certainly aware of for that vision. But, you know, we even had a period in time where we wanted to support APIs to the certification program, but, you know, it was still, fire was still a little bit immature, and we didn't actually specifically name fire at the time, right? It was just sort of a broad API capability, and some vendors chose to implement that using fire, and others didn't. But then as, like, you know, people got excited and it became clear that, you know, different technology developers wanted to use fire, it became fairly obvious to us that, you know, that was a specific capability that we needed to incorporate into our policies and programs. And then you got, you know, the G10 certification criteria for fire APIs and things like that. And so that's all to say that, like, it's very, very helpful to us to have good examples of not only like excitement about what something could be, but actual real world implementation, you know, trial use cases. You know, you mentioned, Lisa, use cases, and I think that's super important as well. Just, you know, using IPS as an example, the fact that there's multiple vendors involved, multiple countries obviously involved, shows that there's just a lot of like excitement and interest in actually using that particular standard and that particular example of a fire document. And so I think having other places where the community and industry kind of coalesces around specific use cases or specific implementation contexts can really help, you know, sort of drive a feedback loop where it starts to make more and more sense to incorporate it into ONC's policies and programs rather than just sort of, you know, watching it with curiosity, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, organizing folks around particular document sets or interest in using fire documents, and then sort of demonstrating that, whether it's through feedback to our regulations or, you know, one-off conversations with folks at ONC or doing presentations at work group meetings where, you know, ONC has a presence, you know, lots of different avenues to actually provide that feedback. But, you know, that's always very, very helpful to bring something from sort of the ideation phase into actually incorporate it into some ONC policy or program.
Alex, this is Dee Dee from Sequoia. Hi. You might want to also mention, I'm trying to throw a feather your way, with what ONC is sponsoring, ASTP ONC is sponsoring for the 10 by 10 project. You guys are helping fuel that fire, as Lisa mentioned in her pun earlier. It's between, 10 providers, 10 payers, but that's also another avenue that is launching very shortly as well.
Yeah, definitely. And it's another thing that there's a lot of excitement around. And it kind of stems back to our overall goals for TEPCA, right? Which is trying to solve some of the existing problems with health information networks that I'm sure many of us are very familiar with, not least of which is that many of the existing health information networks kind of only support the treatment context and sort of clinical care, clinical data exchange, without incorporating sort of that full picture of a person's health, whether that's SDOH or, sort of some of the public healthy things, or on the administrative side with claims and payer data. But then also trying to use that as a hook to accelerate the adoption and use of FHIR in a national exchange context as well. I think, just sort of looking around at adoption, implementation of FHIR, I think it's relatively clear that, there's a lot of excitement and maturity around sort of the patient access use case and, being able to get my health records on an app and things like that. But we haven't seen, I think, as broadly adoption and use of FHIR in a business-to-business context. And so that's certainly one of the goals of the 10 by 10 project is to sort of highlight early adopting organizations who are signing up for TEPCA and are willing to kind of lead the way when it comes to adopting FHIR and to support some of those use cases beyond just I shouldn't call it simple, but treatment use cases and clinical data exchange.
Thanks for throwing that in, DD, and great question, Lisa. Any more on this topic or any before I open it up to other questions? Right. I believe we have about 10 more minutes. What else? What other topics would you like to raise for this Ask ONC session?
Are there any upcoming sessions or webinars that we should be aware of?
If you scroll up to the link about HDI2, there are some great info sessions about HDI2, and right now it's escaping me whether or not they're all passed in their recordings.
We have two
moment.
that are in the future. I had to check
excellent.
too. So we have information blocking deep dive tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern, sorry. And then on Thursday, August 15th, also at 2 p.m. Eastern is the patient, payer, and provider API session.
Okay, great.
And then all of the past ones will be, like Sarah mentioned, on that same link and have available recordings.
Okay.
I'll also put a plug in for a couple of HL7 events that are coming up in the next couple of months that have support from ONC. So there's a security related event happening, I want to say September 4th and 5th, but I might be off by a day or two. And that's sort of a follow on to an event that happened last year. But it's, sort of educational focused, a mix of single presentations and panel discussions on a variety of different security related topics. And then HL7 is also going to be hosting a series of webinars about open source tools. And I think a lot of those are going to be FHIR related, but there may be some in there that are, support the C-CDA community as well. I'm not entirely sure. I think that HL7 is just starting to do announcements and marketing for those events. But they'll be kicking off, I think, sometime in August, and then continuing through September. It will be like a webinar series, so there will be a different tool highlighted, I think weekly for at least a couple of weeks or a few weeks.
And Alex, I believe at least the one on security is free, right?
That's correct. Yeah, there was a nominal registration fee last year, but we did away with that this year, and I believe it's free, and so anybody can register.
Are there going to be the ONC, I forget what you call them, tech sessions or anything this fall?
I don't think we have a tech forum this year, or whatever variation of tech forum it would have been. But we do have the annual meeting coming up in early December. I don't know the specific dates off the top of my head.
4th and 5th are the popular dates. So the ONC annual meeting will also be December 4th and 5th in DC at the, I think it's the Omni, right? The same hotel that we were at last year.
Yeah.
And same deal. So that's free registration and certainly travel costs associated, but the registration itself will be free.
Sarah, this is Lisa again. I think I'd like to do one, thank the ONC, and then a second, ask the ONC. So,
Okay.
you know, the thank the ONC is something that the group who's moderating always starts with, but, you know, we can't say thank you enough. The ONC supports this community getting together twice a year to have these conferences, and the work really makes a big difference in our ability to grow as a community and address problems and get progress going in the right direction. So we thank you for continuing to support the group to get together. And then on the Ask the ONC side, there's an ask that I have been bringing up, usually in much smaller forums, but I'd like to expose the idea to a larger group and explain it again so that maybe more of the folks at ONC will hear about it. Hopefully something will happen someday. You've heard things from the community today about how important it is and how content consumers, the receivers of documents, really struggle when the information isn't being rendered in the order and the logical way that makes sense to support them for their work. And you've also heard about how important it is for the information to be trusted and for the community to have confidence in the data that's being delivered so that they can trust it, so that they can get off from using faxes and really, you know, join the movement in terms of using these digital documents. Many years ago, when we were kind of getting started in all of this, the ONC sponsored something that was called the CDA Rendering Challenge. And they organized in conjunction with HL7, it was organized an effort that allowed innovators to come together and produce a competitive sort of entry to say, you know, we've put together a way that you can render CDA documents, and there was a list of challenges that they need to try and meet. One of the things that came of it was the ability to move sections around to where they would be. And as John Demore said, moving sections these days isn't a hard thing anymore. But what is hard is moving entries. And it seems like our needs have changed a lot from when we were in the very early days to nowadays, where what it would take to give people greater trust and confidence in the data is more control over how the information presents itself when they receive it. And also, if we want to help encourage use of FHIR documents, I would think rendering that can demonstrate that a document, a collection of information presented as a document, is the same collection of information, conveying the same information, the same meaning, the same message, the same story, whether it's in CDA or in FHIR. And so I feel like we're on the edge of a new time when a new rendering challenge that would help us kind of bootstrap up to a new level might do that, just get a spark under things. And a few people with really innovative ideas can enable a much larger community to get better fast, because the code that gets submitted, part of the agreement is it's all open source. So the solutions that won the ONC challenge back in, I think it was like 2012 or 2013, maybe, I can't remember exactly, but it was like a decade ago. Those solutions became open source capabilities that others could borrow from, so they could learn more quickly. How could I make a situation where I give my user control over the order of the sections, or some of the other novel things that they had. So that's the ask. And I don't know how much influence you have, if you guys like come away with ideas that came to you and you do stuff with that. But you can go find the CDA rendering challenge online if you can still look for it. It has the rules laid out. It shows what the prize money was, and what the requirements were to sign up and submit something. So as you guys think about how to help the CDA community, I hope that you would continue to consider if some sort of a rendering challenge that bridges for all types of structured documents, whether expressed as CDA or FHIR, might be something that was a valuable use of your resources at this point in time.
Jeff, your hand's raised.
Okay, yeah, great, thank you. Lisa, thank you for that. I think Al had mentioned earlier in terms of commenting on HTI2, because that's an opportunity to get ideas just kind of onto paper and out into the world. And generally speaking, we have to respond to all comments received, and even if it's just kind of thank you for your comment, and we'll consider this down the road. One particular area that your description and discussion called to mind was, we have proposals in HTI2 around clinical information reconciliation and incorporation, and that is the certification criterion at 45 CFR 170.315B2. And I would encourage you to read that section, and with the eye of what you just described, kind of think about what a future state could look like, because we do have some proposals around what the future state of SIRI is, what we call it, but basically just information reconciliation, what that looks like. And I think we would be open to any of the ideas that you just kind of described, but also fully acknowledging that you're calling for a rendering challenge 2.0, but just an idea.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Thanks. You rattled that off faster than I could write it down. I got as far as 45 CFR, and then you lost me.
170.
Yeah. So actually, what I can do, because the proposal finally got published through the Federal Register, I can send you a direct link to the paragraph where the proposal starts. So
that would
I'll
be
find
great.
that and send
That'd be a
it in
great
chat.
clue. Thank you.
Linda.
Well, in addition to Lisa's thank you for letting, bringing forth these implementation-a-thons, I also want to sincerely thank Matt for allowing Sarah to participate in the CDA management group. I think it's already clear from today's interaction that we're much more engaged with the ONC and have much better context and ways to ask questions. So thank you, Sarah, for participating. And I don't see Matt on here, but thank him for me for allowing her to participate in our management group discussions. While I'm on the topic of management group, everyone is welcome to join and listen and participate in our discussions on the CDA management group. It's at, noon Central, so 1 Eastern every Wednesday, or almost every Wednesday. So we welcome people to join and potentially even consider becoming a member of CDA Management Group over time. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Linda. It's a wonderful group to get to join on my Wednesday afternoons. So I'll put an additional plug in for other people to join the calls, and it's a great group, and honored to get to be a part of it. We'll pass that along to Matt. We do have Molly is Matt's deputy director, so in a way we do have Matt's brain here in that sense. And I am putting my contact information up here on the screen. We've had lots of presenters here from ONC today, and I'm happy to be the director of your queries to the people who spoke today, or to the right places that you that can get you the answers that you're looking for. And these slides will be available probably tomorrow midday. I will send them to Susan so that she can post them on the Confluence page for everyone. And I think that brings us to time. And so I'll turn it back over to our event organizers.
Thank you. This was a great, and again, I'll echo the comments earlier. Thank you for ONC for making all of your people available and answering our questions. All right, we got 15 minutes left for today. I want to thank you all for some great sessions. There's been, I mean, I think we jam-packed things. We might look at giving a little bit more time, but we got to a great start in the morning with the C-CDA challenges. And I think there was some good conversation about specialty data and the maternal health. And then we saw that, you know, sort of the theme of the afternoon, other than the insurance coverage, was, you know, the fire and C-CDA, you know, coexisting. That was great. So our plan for tomorrow, we'll start the same time, early in the day for those of us on the West Coast. Dee Dee's going to talk to us about Sequoia data usability, and then we're going to have our breakout tracks. So in the morning, we have 2 breakout tracks. Lisa and Catherine are going to lead maternal health breakout track, while John Demore and Benjamin Lesner are going to lead the validation.
I'll take it.
Yeah. you gotta grow your hair long and wear eyeglasses. Then in the afternoon, John's going to give us an update on the CDA R2 online edition, and also recap. And then again, I mentioned this morning, we may break out into 2 sessions, depending on what we need. It'll be validation, hands-on validation. And for those people who need help setting up their environments, I'm volunteering to lead a second session to help those people, you know, get things set up so we don't have to spend too much time in the main breakout track. We do have a couple presentations. Lisa, I know you had sent us some slides. We're going to do those tomorrow. We're going to carve out some time. So I know you had one about IDs and the direct messaging. We're going to take some time tomorrow. So we're going to carve out some time tomorrow for Lisa to do a couple presentations. These are some follow-ups on from the action items from before. And I'll just ask the rest of the team. Susan, Jaginder, am I missing anything?
Oh, unless you want to summarize the actions from today.
Yeah, I mean, so everyone please look at the event page. Jaginder's been taking notes and putting presentations in. I think so far we've gotten we've got basically 3 ballot comments. So from Catherine's, we had a ballot comment around result organization, the result organizer, and also around the link codes. Brett's going to follow up with the data usability around the generation of empty documents. And for maternal health, we're going to get a ticket against CDR3 for pregnancy pregnancy summary organizer in the pregnancy section. Those are the action items. Now, Confluence has been, behind the scenes, Confluence has been going up and down. So, Jaginder, are there any other action items that you recorded that aren't on Confluence yet?
No, no other action items.
Okay, good. All right. Unless anyone else has anything, we can break, and we'll see you all here bright and early at 7 a.m. Pacific, 8 a.m. Mountain, 9 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Eastern.